Morning, perfect spirit. Can you hear me okay? Can I see a little thumbs up so everybody in the audience can hear me? Okay, perfect. So, yeah, that's really the key is to understand that we are perfect spirit and we get hung up on this identity, this body. And that was really my journey that I was a very sick man for a very long time, as Annette discussed, that I lost the ability to walk from multiple sclerosis at age 37. I had all these health challenges. I wasn't a spiritual person. I wasn't a religious person. I was actually pushed away from religion and spirituality. And my, excuse me, in my world, they were the same thing. Because I know when I was bipolar and in the hospital because I was suicidal, I remember my pastor uncle coming into the hospital trying to cast the demons from my head. So that really pushed me away from spirituality and religion because they were one for me. I was like, I'm not possessed. I don't have demons in my head. But in a way, I guess you could say I did because I was possessed by my thoughts, taking my thoughts as their truth. And when we stop taking our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs as the absolute truth, we allow our perfect spirit within us to lead the way. And it's really what that is about, leading the way. So I've witnessed many miraculous things when the mind is no longer interfering. You know, a person with cancer on their deathbed, living for another 5 years when we quiet that mind, get that mind out of the way. And that story was quite interesting because I also bring in doctors from the spiritual realms when there's physical healing that's needed in the case of a knee. And I got a name of a doctor, and I usually don't do this, get the names, but I got the name and I asked her, do you know this doctor? And she says, oh, yes, that's my childhood doctor. And this doctor was making a joke. Once a patient, always a patient. And I've seen many miraculous things from people dealing with, severe panic attacks where they can't work, they can't move in society. We clear that away, and now they can work, they can live in society. And we have to realize this mind is always creating these limitations. And there's also physical healing that can happen as well when the mind isn't interfering, because we need to understand that we are that perfect spirit and the mind is interfering, that we become wellness educated. We start reading everything we can about our disease, our medications, and we think we know what is best for us. But that's thinking thing is the problem. I used to know everything about MS, bipolar, migraines, and all these other ailments I had, and all the medicine and all this information kept my mind busy. So I was very educated in a wellness space, and it kept me sick, but it was finally releasing all of that that the body could heal. So it's really about removing this mental interference. And I usually don't do a lot of talking because I don't want to instill more concepts, more beliefs, because you'll get into a spot where I could never do this. And to understand you can do this, you can create these miracles in your life. And when I'm working with individuals, I can have about help about 8 or 9 out of 10 individuals I can help, and 1 or 2 I cannot help for whatever reason. It could be their belief system, this ailment is serving them some way, or maybe it's something they chose to live with for their soul evolution. That ultimately I see that we are here for our evolution to learn to grow. So sometimes we have these experiences of a poor health, and that might be here for a reason. I really don't know, but there's some cases where I simply cannot help individuals. And to understand, you might be doing all the right things, and whatever is ailing you isn't leaving. Maybe it's still serving a purpose. You're still meant to learn something from it. And if you are, it will stick, because we have to realize there are no mistakes. If you're experiencing something, it's for a reason. And if we don't understand that reason, then it will stay in place. So when I'm working with individuals, it's mostly silent, but once in a while I'll say words. And these words that will come through will be help them to understand and realize what's going on in their life that perhaps they're missing, they're not seeing, because we get these blinders on When we start going through life, we get these blinders on, we can't see the bigger purpose. So something keeps repeating itself and we don't understand why. Like, no, I was initially hit by a car at age 6. And I had these medical issues stemming from that. And I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker as time went on. So it was the same thing repeating in a loop. I just didn't understand this because I wasn't getting the lesson. I wasn't understanding the teaching. It wasn't until I lost the ability to walk that forced me inward. And I was still locked into this world that I was incurable, that I couldn't be fixed. But having MS was a blessing. Losing the ability to walk was a blessing because it forced me inward. And I lived with that MS for 7 years until finally I had an experience that Wayne Dyer calls these quantum shifts. Because dealing with MS, I had a lot of fatigue. So I was a couch potato. I used to watch a lot of TV. So I was watching ghost hunting shows, but I didn't know if that was real or fake until I went on this ghost hunt in Philadelphia and I felt somebody sitting next to me that wasn't there. I was like, oh, that's curious. So ghosts are real. So what's this all about? So it led me to be curious in a new way, as opposed to exploring my ailments, my medicine, and keeping myself trapped in that world. I now had this ghost world to go explore. So it's like, okay, well, who talks to ghosts? Mediums. Let me go read a book from a medium. And in this book, they talk about meditation, but it was just a page and a half on meditation. And one of the benefits was inner peace. I'm like, that's it. I'm going to meditate. I need inner peace. So I was so stressed out, so overwhelmed with life. I just simply wanted peace. But something very interesting, though, when I look back at this, I trusted that I could get inner peace. And I see one of the big hangups for people not getting better, their life not improving, whether it's health, finances, relationships, 1,001 things, it's not improving because they're not trusting herself. As I heard earlier, somebody says spirit is constantly talking to them. And spirit is constantly talking to us because we are spirit, but we're not listening to ourselves. We're not trusting ourselves. So the biggest thing that I see that people that are remaining in these stuck conditions is an ingrained deep pattern of not trusting themselves because we've been so conditioned, like I was conditioned. My team of 8 doctors knew what was best for me. So I just followed whatever my doctor said. And it wasn't me stepping back and saying, is this the best course of treatment for me? So I was seeing 8 doctors. My health was continuing decline. When I went on that quest for inner peace, and I trusted I could acquire inner peace, then everything changed. Because peace is who we really are, this deeper essence. And through meditation or a mindfulness practice, I didn't really have any formal practice. I discovered that, oh, mind thinking, stop thinking, mind thinking, stop thinking. Because I was under the impression that the mind stops thinking. But when I saw that day that when the mind was thinking, I would tell it to stop thinking, and mind would think, and I would say, stop thinking. I said, wait a second, I'm aware of my thoughts. If I'm aware of my thoughts, I'm not my thoughts. This was a huge realization because I nearly killed myself in my 20s from my thoughts, taking them as my truth, our beliefs or ideas, and allowing that to define us. So my diagnosis did create my destiny. And I want people to see that if you have a diagnosis, a chronic illness, it doesn't have to define you, but our mind can give it power to define us. So we need to step away from all of that and to understand that I'm perfect spirit. Everyone listening and watching here today is perfect spirit. But we get caught up and conditioned. This is your name. This is your sex. This is your diagnosis. This is your chronic illness. And all of these stories that we ingrain as our truth, and they're not our truth. It's just the current human experience. It doesn't need to be our permanent reality to realize we are the eternal, and this is the temporary human experience. And yes, I understand that when you're in a lot of pain, like I was, a lot of suffering, it's hard to step out of the mind because I see pain is the greatest distraction. So the first thing I like to do with individuals, if they're in pain, let's reduce that pain as quickly as possible. And I've seen many cases, and someone who's in a 10 level pain, that are a 9 level pain or an 8, really high level of pain, within 10, 15 minutes, if they're one of those 8 or 9 that I can help, I can take that 10 down to a 5, maybe a 3, sometimes gone. If I can get it really low, then we can start dissolving those beliefs, those ideas, so they can begin doing that practice of remembering who they are. But the mind's a trickster as well. So I've seen many individuals where I take them down to a 10 to a 3, and the next day I'll hear from them, the pain's back. Oh, yeah, it's back, because the mind says, oh, there's something missing here, and it drags it back. So I give individuals that recording to keep playing it back, this healing session, because the mind doesn't like change and will protest against all change. So we need to keep doing this daily practice of dissolving those beliefs that I call the head trash. That's a lot of garbage up there that we just need to get out so we can clearly hear that spirit, that intuition within us. When we need to understand as well that intuition is both internal and external. Because if you're not trusting yourself, the information is not going to come internally. It's going to come from someone else that you trust, or a book, a video. It will come seemingly outside yourself, because we still have these deep beliefs that we don't know what is best for us. But to understand, you inhabit your body, you know what's best for you. So it's really about relaxing, slowing down, and to understand it is simply relaxing. I never had any rules on how I sit, hold my hands, breathe, posture. All of this would have kept me in my mind. So I was very fortunate that the pages that I read on meditation didn't have any instructions on meditation besides relaxing. That was basically it. Because if you gave me spiritual dogma, I've been so trapped in, am I doing this right, with my OCD brain and obsessing about doing things right? I would never freed myself from the mind. And that's what ultimately we're here to, free yourself from the mind. And that every experience that we're having in this human journey is to reflect, to give us a contrast. The body is pain, body is in pain, I'm suffering, I'm in a bad relationship, a bad career, bad finances. That experience is here for a reason, to show you what you do not want. So if you want to change a situation, it's always about going within and finding that right way forward for you. And just really just to slow down. And slowing down is so important. The mind is very reactive. It sees something and immediately reacts, sees something, reacts. We want to learn to respond, to break those habits, to slow down. So for really the essence of healing is you, is to let go of the external. And maybe they're your tools, your aids, your helpers, but ultimately it comes back to you and your agency of doing those simple practices to stay grounded and rooted, like we did today. And that's opening to get us back into this moment. If we did this a few times a day, a simple 1 or 2 minute practice, we would be a different person in a month, because we would start to learn to come back to who we really are. So I don't really want to do much talking today. Like I said, I don't want to instill concepts, beliefs, because usually it's pulling away all this stuff, and no one knows your path. But most of the time, whatever you're dealing with doesn't need to be there. From health to finances to relationships, things can change if we're willing to break these routines and habits, and to let go of all that stuff that doesn't serve us.